Albuquerque, prepped her out for the Nick Cage movie.
And just for the record, where did they drive from?
They both drove from Bullhead City, Arizona.
Oh, thank you. So they came to Albuquerque, and did they have the live ammunition with them?
They did.
And where did you all go from there?
She loaded up and left to Livingston, Montana to work the Nick Cage movie, and Thale and I loaded up the Sprinter with everything we needed, and we headed straight to Texas.
And did you take that live ammunition with you to Texas?
We did.
And did the actors get to have their training camp?
They did.
And was there any ammunition left over?
There was.
Where did it go?
It stayed in Texas for an undetermined amount of time. I could never figure out when it came back to my shop.
With who? When you say it stayed in Texas, did it sit by itself?
It was with the prop master for the day of the show up at the shooting range, up at the firing line, and from there it came back into the Sprinter van, my Sprinter van, and then at one point or another it made it back into the hotel room. And I lost track of it once it was in the hotel room, and from there when it got loaded back into the Sprinter van and came back to Albuquerque.
So, but it doesn't come back to Albuquerque by itself. So tell us how it gets from the cowboy training camp to Albuquerque.
Well, it's driven back.
By who?
By myself.
Okay. So, and how is it packaged? What kind of a container is it in?
All the live ammunition from the cowboy training camp was in a typical household gray bin. Approximately 2 feet long, 16 inches tall, about the same width. And it stayed in there and was packaged within each caliber individually within smaller boxes that typically held about 50 rounds.
Do you have any idea approximately how many rounds were taken to Texas?
Yeah, I know exactly. It was 325 rounds.
How do you know exactly?
Well, it was a guess of Thales that there was between 200 and 300, and they were loosely combined in a small military green ammo can. And when I opened up that bin in Texas at the firing range for the first time, I had brought along 10 boxes, white plain boxes with styrofoam inserts that held 50 rounds each. So I populated those boxes. And then it took a picture of those boxes. And one of the boxes is dog-eared, means it's partial, and coincidentally it held exactly 25 rounds.
In case I missed it, how many rounds came back to New Mexico?
Between 50 and 100.
And when they came back to New Mexico, where did they go?
They went, because I was running low on space, they went into the bathroom.
Were they in the green can?
No. Once they had been populated into the small white boxes, the green ammo can went to the firing line, and it was being used for the spent shells, for the spent cases of fired brass.
So how were they kept at PDQ?
They were kept in that same gray bin, large household typical gray bin, and within the same boxes that they had populated or gotten populated into at the Texas firing line.
So I'm going to show you what has been previously entered into evidence as Defendant's Exhibit A21. Do you recognize that?
I do.
What is that?
That is that gray typical household bin marked live ammo 1883.
Sir, I want to be clear with you. After this came back to Albuquerque and was at PDQ Props, did you then become involved in providing props and ammunition to the set of Rust?
Can you ask that again, please?
Did you provide props and ammunition to the set of the movie Rust?
I did.
Was that after you brought these back from Texas?
I do not know. I do not know when this bin came back to Albuquerque from Texas.
You drove it back yourself?
I did, but I did a few trips.
You don't remember the day that you brought it back?
Correct.
Okay.
It could have been before the shooting, could have been after the shooting.
Understood. In terms of boxes of dummy rounds, how many boxes of dummy rounds did you provide to the set of Rust?
A single box of 50 45 Colt dummy rounds. That was the single box. The rest of them were of different calibers and were not contained in similar boxes.
So you provided one box of dummy rounds.
That's correct.
Where did you get those?
Those came off the set, off the prop truck of 1883.
And did you inventory them or do anything with them before you provided them to the set of Rust?
Yeah, so yes, there was. I essentially grabbed a double grocery bag and dummies because I knew they were running short, or I'd heard that they were running short on set, and I thought, well, just in case, I'll grab some extra for them. And so from that plastic bag, the following morning, because again, I had to sleep in the van because there was hundreds of thousands of dollars of weapons, and it's Albuquerque. So I slept in the van, armed, and the next morning brought that bag and brought them into the office and took a look at them. They were unusual in that they had been antiqued. They were one of a couple of thousand that had been antiqued en masse, and they were so corroded they didn't look right at all. So I sat there, and each one took about a minute to polish before it had an appropriate patina. And I also noted that a few of them had a muddy rattle to them, and I just attributed it to whatever liquid chemical agent that they had soaked the rounds in had infiltrated the interior of the case, and again, not a metallurgist, but had done something to the number 2 lead shot, a single piece that served as a rattle to differentiate live from dummies.
Okay, stand by. I'm just looking for some exhibits. We've got a lot right now, so I need to flip through for a second. The dummy rounds that you provided to the set of Rust, did you personally ensure that they were all inert?
Absolutely.
And was the box full when you provided it to Rust?
It was 50 rounds individually inserted into styrofoam. Each housing, each section. So it's essentially a 5-row wide, 10-row deep styrofoam insert that holds the rounds separately from each other, and then is inserted into a small white enclosing box, cardboard box.
And when you provided them to the set of Rust, how did they get there? Did you drive there yourself?
Sarah Zachary, the prop master of Rust, came by my office and brought a gun that they were having trouble with, reassembling that gun after it was being cleaned. So I quickly put that back together, met with her, chatted, and gave her the dummy rounds.
And is that the only box that you provided?
Yes.
Did anything from this box that we have here, or this container, Defendant's Exhibit A21, was any of that sent to the set of Rust?
Absolutely not.
Let me ask you, did you also supply props and ammunition to the set of a movie called The Old Way?
No ammunition. Blanks and dummy rounds, yes.
And do you know who the armorer was on the set of The Old Way?
Hannah Gutierrez-Reed.
And you indicated that you didn't supply ammunition. If you know, do you know if dummy rounds were used on the set of The Old Way?
They were. Dummy rounds were used.
And where did those dummy rounds come from if you didn't provide them?
They came from Thale Reed.
How do you know that?
Because I witnessed them packing up her car and assembling all the blanks and dummy rounds that she was going to need.
So, did Hannah stay in touch with you when she was working as the armorer on the set of The Old Way?
Loosely, yes.
Did you receive any communications from her regarding the use of live rounds in the prop gun?
She did. She did reach out to me.
How? Text? Call?
Both. She called on one particular day because she had been looking for 45 Colt ammunition, live ammunition to shoot.
How did you know that?
Because she asked me at the office. And I thought it was odd because Thale had live ammunition, and you know, why was he not giving his daughter any? I found it peculiar. So at one point in her travels from Albuquerque to Livingston, Montana, she stops along the way and stays with friends in Denver, Colorado. And at one point between Denver, Colorado and Livingston, Montana on her travels, she called me and told me she finally had found live ammunition, 45.
So once she makes it to Montana, does she contact you about shooting live ammunition out of the prop guns?
She does. She texts me this time, and she asks if she can shoot live ammunition out of the set guns.
Well, how did you respond?
I said absolutely not, and it's a big mistake, and I even said it always ends in tears.
And did you have any additional communications with her about live rounds after that?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So after you take your box of dummy rounds and you give it to Sarah Zachary, do you ever see it again?
Only in the evidence photos.
Okay, so let's look at those. Defendant's Exhibit A27, previously entered into evidence. Do you see that?
I do.
And do you know what we're looking at here?
I do.
Describe to us what we're looking at.
Well, these are these antiqued rounds that came off the set of 1883, actually more specifically the prop truck of 1883. And you can see that they're heavily aged. And this is after each one has been polished with Quado steel wool for about a minute.
Okay, that's fine.
Yep, okay.
What about this one? Does this one look different?
Yeah, absolutely. The case is way too bright. It looks nearly new, and that is an anomaly. I do not believe that came from me because all the rounds were heavily aged.
Okay. I'm going to show you what is entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 30. Do you see that?
I do.
What is that a photo of?
It looks to be the same antique rounds, dummy rounds that I provided Rust.
Okay. So you provide these to the set of Rust, and obviously there's an incident and Ms. Hutchins dies. Do you then reach out to law enforcement and begin communicating with law enforcement?
I do.
Why?
Well, I think they wanted access to the guns that were on the prop truck near the set of Rust, and there was some text message discussions regarding that. I offered to open the safe.
Why did you have a combination to the safe on the set of Rust?
I actually didn't until I think the day that I met former Detective Hancock at the prop truck, the day that they executed the warrant. I didn't actually have the combination until Sarah Zachary gave it to me.
So Ms. Zachary gave you the combination and you were able to open the safe? I
didn't actually physically open it myself. I never went onto the prop truck. Just passed along to...
Okay, what did you do then?
Well, I met off to the side with Detective Hancock at the time, and at one point Sarah Zachary was there as well while they were searching the prop truck, and as well as opening and starting to pull guns out of the safe.
Okay. Do you recall having a conversation with Detective Hancock where you asked Mr. Teskey to provide information about rounds.
I do.
Tell us about that.
Well, it was one of 2 or 3 times that I went up to the sheriff's department to provide evidence or something that I thought might be of value to the investigation. And upon one of those visits, we were in the interview room and I was just trying to figure out where these live rounds could have come from, and I thought possibly Troy Teskey might have something that was similar. And so I called him while we were in the interview room, and I believe it was being recorded with Detective Hancock right there, and we started the dialogue, and at that point it went into a text exchange with pictures as well, with at least one picture.
I haven't had an opportunity to mark this as evidence, but I'd like to. I only have a digital copy of it, but I intend to use this with the witness. This is, as an offer of proof, Your Honor, this is a copy of the text message between Mr. Teskey and Mr. Kinney. So I'd like to just go ahead and display it, and I can mark it and provide it to the court. I just don't have a paper copy of it. Do you need to see it?
No, I know what this document is.
Okay, let's go.
What is it going to be? These are going to be, actually, this is a separate motion hearing, so when I marked that the supplemental as courts 13, I think I should have marked it separately as courts 1 for
Okay.
the motion hearing. And then while we're here, I have not marked those, so those are courts 2.
These the ammunition?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So what do you want me to mark this exhibit that I'm going to use with Mr. Kinney?
Well, now you're going to have to. Well, let me do this. Let me make this courts Roman numeral 1 and courts Roman numeral 2, and then you can keep your 1s and he can keep his alphabet. You can keep your numerics.
I should just continue with the next exhibit.
No, because we're in a motion hearing.
Right.
Now.
So we'll call this State's Exhibit 1.
Right.
Okay, got it.
Now, you also introduced some other evidence, which you can refer to. You don't have to reintroduce it. We'll just identify it as like 27 from the trial. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Okay. Can you mark this? Can you mark that for me? Courts 2, Roman numeral 2.
Is there a reason I'm not seeing this on the monitors? Oh, sorry, did I miss that? Yeah.
Okay, well, he's doing this first.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, right there, right on top. Thank you. Okay.
Do you see what's in front of you, sir?
Video.
Is this what? Tell us what we're looking at here, and if you can, and what we're looking at is going to be State's Exhibit 1 for the motion hearing. I'm enlarging it, and I'll move it away again. Can you see the date?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
What is it?
November 1, 2021.
So tell us what we're looking at. What were the circumstances of this?
This is once I had called Troy Teskey in the interview room at the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office with Detective Hancock present. He was somewhere out and about, and he said he would be home in about 5 minutes or so. And at that point, I asked him if he had any of the reloads that Thale had owned for a number of years that a common friend of ours had manufactured for him. And I asked for samples.
Hang on. Why would Troy Teskey have Thale Reed's ammunition?
Troy used to store Thale's guns and ammunition for him at his home.
Okay. So you ask Troy if he has any of the leftover reloads.
Correct.
And so is what we're looking at, the leftover reloads that you're asking about, did they go to 1883?
They're the same reloads, but they never cross paths once Thale leaves Bullhead City with the ammo can of 325. That are those reloads. These reloads are some of the ones that Thale left along with his guns for Troy Teskey to store.
So these never went to the set of 1883?
Absolutely not.
And
Definitely not a set.
Okay, whatever. The cowboy training
yeah.
camp. And did they ever go to you?
No.
Because they never went to you, were you ever able to intentionally or mistakenly provide them to the set of Rust?
Definitely not. And they're not even, the brass primers are a dead giveaway for that which was not on Rust.
And you bring me to my next question. Are you familiar with the way that the live rounds found on the set of Rust look?
I am.
Do they look like these?
No.
So let's look at the text exchange here at the bottom. Who's communicating?
My text is in green, and Troy's is on the left side in black and white.
So what does Troy say?
Excuse me. Again, glasses are horrible. Sorry about this. Yeah, thank you. Just below the picture, Troy writes, I checked a bunch of the rounds. These are the 4 different types that I could find. And I reply, yep, it's evidence in the accidental death.
And hang on, we're going to stop there. Why did you think this was evidence in the accidental death?
Well, I think at that point, without having seen the evidence photos and knowing, the only thing I did see was Detective Hancock shared with me a black and white 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with some pictures on it, and I saw Starline brass, and it was the nickel primer Starline brass case, and I hadn't really connected the dots that the gentleman that loaded these hasn't had nickel primers in 10, 12 years.
How do you know that?
Well, he says he only used Winchester primers.
No. Did you speak to him? How do you know that?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Right after Hancock and I got done with this meeting, I called him because it dawned on me that it seemed unlikely that there would be 2 different color primers, and so I called the gentleman and I asked him, at what point, if you
What
made...
gentleman? Don't use the word gentleman. We need names.
Joe Swanson.
Okay.
Okay. So I called Joe Swanson. I asked him at what point, if he remembered making the reloads for Thale, which he did. I asked him which powders he might have used, and he gave me 2 options, and one of which was Trail Boss powder. And I asked him, I said, well, at what point would you switch between brass and nickel primers? And he said, I wouldn't. And I said, well, why? He said, well, because Winchester stopped making them 10, 12 years ago.
Not making what?
Nickel primers.
Okay.
So he only, if we look at all the evidence photos of all the blanks that Joe Swanson makes, you will not see a nickel primer in any of those blank rounds for the same reason.
So you indicated to Mr. Teskey on November 1st, 2021, this is evidence in the accidental death. And you're talking about this photograph.
I am. And, well, the rounds.
The rounds in the photograph.
Yes.
Have you learned a few things about the evidence in the case and the live rounds that were found on Rust since November 1st of 2021?
Yes.
Do you still believe that these are evidence in the accidental death?
Definitely not.
And then I see Mr. Teskey responds and says, okay, and then what do you say?
Can you zoom in? Thank you.
Let me see. There you go.
I reply, ugh, this sucks, but she's seriously trying to blame everyone else for her mistake.
What does he say?
He replies, who is she, Hannah? ? And I reply, Hannah.
And then you ask an important question. Read that to us.
Yeah, November 3rd, 2021, I ask, Troy Teskey, in text, did you see any rounds in either box with nickel primers?
What's his response?
He replies, no.
Okay. Is that just a close-up of the same photo of the ammunition?
It is.
And you have testified that this is dissimilar. This is dissimilar to the live rounds that were on the set of Rust.
Yes, and from this photo, we can only see that we have 4 different cases, different manufacturers of cases. The brass primers are obviously a dead giveaway, but what we don't see on the inside is that the powder is different than Rust. The actual powder itself, as well as the projectiles, are different than what was found on Rust.
So, Mr. Kinney, the ammunition that is in this can here, that's Defendant's Exhibit A21, what happened to it? Where did it go?
I'm not seeing an exhibit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I can't switch back and forth that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Can you see it? Do
Yeah,
you want me to
the
touch?
gray bin. Yeah, the gray bin. Yep, I see it.
What happened to the ammunition that was in this can that you brought back from Texas?
It sat in that bin in the bathroom and was.
And ultimately, when did it leave PDQ? Under what circumstances?
Oh, when the sheriff's department executed a search warrant on on my business.
They took all of it.
Yes, they weren't entitled to all of it, but I just said take all of it. The warrant specified it had to be Starline brass, and I just told them take it all.
So everything that you brought back from Texas is in the custody of the sheriff's department.
Correct.
Did you, at any point in time, did you ever exchange ammunition with Thel Reader Troy Teskey again after the death of Helena Hutchins?
No.
So any ammunition that would be in the possession of Mr. Teskey, is that anything that you have ever had possession of?
No. No, I've only once received 45 Colt live ammunition from someone, and that was Thale, and that on our way headed to Texas. And I hadn't opened the can until we got to Texas.
At some point in time, Mr. Kinney, did you have reason to believe that Mr. Reed and Mr. Teskey wanted to blame the introduction of the live rounds to the set of Rust on you?
To varying degrees, yes. I wasn't, Thale definitely. And later on, Troy, it seemed palpable that they were trying to point the finger at me.
Okay. Let me think. Hang on just a second. I just want to make sure I'm done. How certain are you that you didn't provide any live rounds to the set of Rust?
I have provided blanks and dummy rounds and guns to over 1,000 different productions. And on average, it's 5 to 10 guns per episode, per feature film. And each gun would typically have about 10 dummy rounds with it. So that's between 50 and 100,000 dummy rounds. And I have never spent more time with a single box of dummy rounds than the rounds that came from 1883, the dummy rounds that went to Ross. So there was never a question in my mind that I provided the live ammunition to Rust.
Okay. I'll pass this witness. And Mr. Spiro, is there an exhibit that you need me to provide?
Just, you can email me that.
The text message?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So in the thousands of times you've provided ammunition to movie sets that you just told me about,
Blanks and dummy rounds.
I know, I apologize.
That's
I'm
all
not,
right.
I'm not trying to use the word ammunition to
Okay.
get you.
Gotcha.
All right. In the thousands of times you've done that, that would mean
I'm sorry, Your Honor, Ms. Johnson's asking to approach.
thousands of productions that you've
1,000-ish, not thousands.
Okay. The 1,000 productions that you've... Oh, you said over 1,000 different productions.
Feature films, episodics,
Okay. 5 to 10 guns per episode per feature film.
or an episode.
Each gun would typically have about 10 dummy rounds with it, so that's between 50 and 100,000 dummy rounds. Right?
Yes. 5,000. Yeah, that's the math. Yeah.
And you're telling this court that of all the dummy rounds, in all the productions, in all the years, these 50 were the ones that you checked the most.
They required the most time because of the antiquing, and because that, again, some of them had a muddy rattle. So there was no point in providing a dummy round that had a muddy rattle to set. That's the last thing you want to have happen. And so each one had to ring clearly with the number 2 lead shot inside of it.
And of all the dummy rounds on all the sets, these ones had a muddy rattle.
No. The ones that were excluded had a muddy rattle.
I see. You provided 45 long Colt dummy rounds to the set of Russ, correct?
Yes. And more specifically, through Sarah Zachary. She picked them up.
Right. And you know Sarah Zachary was at your prop house on the 12th of October, correct?
Yes.
And you came back from Albuquerque, I I mean, rather, you came back from 1883 on the 11th, at least one trip, correct?
Yeah, I arrived sometime in the middle of the night, the night of the 11th. It could have been past midnight.
You've got to put it on. I think.
Is it okay?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I didn't know you wanted.
You arrive the 11th.
Night of the 11th.
She comes the 12th.
Yes.
Shooting happens on the 21st.
Yes.
Russ needed 45 long Colt dummies.
May have needed. Knew they were running short.
Okay, they may have not needed it the most of all time, but they needed it, right?
Possibly.
I've already told this court that you had brought 45 long Colt rounds from the set of 1883, correct?
The dummy rounds from the prop truck. Yes.
There were also live ammunition on 1883, correct?
No.
There was no live ammunition on the set of 1883? Not on the set of 1883, at the cowboy camp, just off the set of 1883.
Not even close to anything that was filming.
Okay, so not anywhere close to filming, and not on the set, but at 1883's cowboy camp.
The cowboy training camp for 1883. Yes.
Okay.
Live, yes.
And you brought some of those live rounds to PDQ, correct?
Yes.
The live 45 long Colt rounds to PDQ, correct?
Yes.
And you've told this court that when you brought them back, they were between 50 and 100, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you provided 45 long Colts, again, you say dummies, I get it, to Sarah Zachary, correct?
Correct.
Those were Starline brass with nickel primers, correct?
Yes.
The invoice you provided to Sarah Zachary and the set of rust had 200 listed as the amount that you provided, correct?
I don't recall.
Do you deny it?
Sounds about right. It could be. The invoice was generated weeks after, so it was done from memory at that point.
Okay. Have you been watching any of this trial?
Just the headlines, whatever comes on the news.
Okay. Do you know that on direct examination of CST Popple, that this was entered into evidence, which is States 30?
I haven't seen her at all during
Got
this
it.
trial.
Well, eventually on cross-examination, it turned out that these were, of course, the rounds provided, correct?
Except for the bright one in the lower row, in the middle, just above the two zeros that are next to each other. Yeah, in the evidence number, I don't believe that is a round that came from PDQ.
When you say you don't believe, what you think you said in direct is you're not certain, but you don't believe, correct?
It's 2.5 years ago. It does not appear. I'm 99.9% sure that was not inclusive of the original styrofoam insert of 50 in the box.
Okay, so it sounds like you're not certain, but fairly certain, and it's been a long time. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. At the time, when your memory was fresher, you actually received a photograph of this, and you told Detective Hancock this, and it has a nickel primer, which is sketchy. Correct?
Can I don't know what the photograph is. A photograph of what?
Did you, in fact, tell Detective Hancock that that picture, that round, was sketchy?
I recall saying that, or texting her, possibly texting her saying that, because it was concerning, because it didn't look like any of the antique rounds that I had provided.
Right. So, at the time, years ago, when you first see this, when your memory was fresher, the word you used was sketchy, correct?
I recall that, yes.
The incident happens on the 21st of October, and at 1:55 p.m., you receive a text message from Sarah Zachary telling you that this has occurred, correct?
I think it wasn't telling me that it occurred. It just said emergency in all caps.
And you called her, right?
I did. I missed a call from her, received the text. I think I said I'd call her back, and I did.
Okay.
Within just a minute or two.
And between the time you provided, whatever it is that you provided to Rust, and the moment you get that emergency text, isn't it fair to say you're not sitting around daydreaming and wondering and thinking about each round you provided and whatever you provided to the set. You do this for a living. You do it lots of times, right?
That's correct, yeah.
But the moment that happens, right, things change, didn't they?
What changed?
Well, Miss Hutchins died, right?
I wasn't aware of that till hours later.
You spoke to Miss Zachary 5 times that night, right?
I don't recall. Probably.
Miss Zachary, had the shell casing, right, at one point that evening?
No, I don't recall that.
You don't recall that?
No, that she said she held the spent case from the gun. I don't recall that.
Sarah Zachary threw out some of the evidence, correct?
I had heard that months and months afterwards, that she had thrown out dummy rounds from Jensen Ackles' gun.
Months and months?
I believe so.
Sure about that?
Fairly. It's been a long time.
Right. And the only messages that we have from around that time we're going to look at. But you knew at that moment that you had just provided 45 Starline brass dummies, correct? With nickel primers.
Nearly all the dummy rounds I provide are Starline brass.
And you would agree with me that anybody who did provide that round or brought it onto the set would have every reason to want to deny that, correct?
No. Hannah Gutierrez admitted in questioning at the sheriff's office that she brought the box that contained the live rounds.
No, she didn't. She actually said she hadn't seen that box, and that's just something that's been fed to you by the prosecutors, isn't that true?
No, I've actually seen the interview.
Okay, well, we can pull up that interview if we need to. So, the week after the accident, you know that we have some of your text messages, right?
Yes,
Okay, and you weren't sleeping, right?
correct.
You were drinking a lot?
I don't even remember.
You were talking to your cop buddies to try to get advice about the case?
I don't recall that.
You texted Sarah Zachary in the days that followed, do not say anything or write anything to anyone, right?
Yes, I remember that text.
Do nothing, say nothing, write nothing, correct?
Correct.
She told you she wanted to get a lawyer, right?
Yes.
You told her not to get a lawyer, right?
Yes.
In fact, at one point you just said, shh, and with an emoji, right?
I don't recall that.
Okay. You did provide Detective Hancock. Do we have that photo that was entered into evidence on the screen? Okay. Did you email that? Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll get it in a minute. But the one that you just saw on the screen of you and Mr. Teskey, do you remember that photograph that you just looked at?
With the reloads?
Yeah.
Yes.
You actually took a screenshot of that and sent it to Detective Hancock, correct?
It sounds like something I would do. I don't recall doing it, but it sounds accurate.
Okay. Does it sound like... I don't have the photo, so... But the photo that you took and sent to... of the screenshot that you sent to Detective Hancock, it included that line. Yes, this is evidence in the accidental death, right?
That was my speculation prior to learning that the live rounds from Rust had nickel primers.
Well, sir, that's the problem with your testimony, isn't it?
Which is what?
In the very same text chain, you ask about nickel primers. So how is it possible that you didn't know about it when you said that this is evidence in the accidental death?
Because the meeting with Hancock and the text exchange with the pitcher occurred on November 1st. 2 days later, on November 3rd, I had asked by text whether or not any of the rounds had nickel primers. And he replied, Troy Teskey replied, no. And at that point, that was the reason why.
So this is, I think it's Court Exhibit 2, perhaps, of this hearing.
This one? No. Mine are Roman numeral 1 and 2.
It's going to be States 1.
States 1.
I just haven't had a chance to mark it.
That's fine. We'll call it States 1 for now. You see it on your screen?
I do.
Okay. And you say, yep, it's evidence in the accidental death, correct?
That's on November 1st, yes.
Correct. That's what you wrote, sir, right?
On November 1st, yes.
Okay. And you didn't say anything about speculating, did you?
No.
Okay, but when you screenshot this to Detective Hancock, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, let me ask you, after he says, okay, you say, this sucks, but she's seriously trying to blame everyone else for her mistake, correct?
Yes, that's what it says.
Okay. So it's, this sucks, but she's trying to blame everybody else, right?
Yes.
This sucks that it comes from the same batch, but it's really her fault because she loaded into the weapon, right?
Well, first off, I pronounced that ugh. And then what was the second part of your question?
But it's her fault because she loaded into the weapon, correct?
Certainly.
And you said that over and over again as you continue to meet with law enforcement, that whatever happened here, it's her fault, she loaded it, correct?
Well, certainly she's responsible for loading a live round into a gun on a movie set.
How come when you provided the screenshot, this is defense 1 for the hearing, how come when you provided defense A, sorry, Your Honor. How come when you provided the screenshot of the text message to Detective Hancock, you left out the, this sucks. But seriously, she's trying to blame everyone else for her mistake.
If you put that back up, I think you'll see that the digital keyboard is in the way of whatever's underneath it.
I see. And is there something with your phone where you can't take multiple screenshots and just go further down like you did 10 other times in this case?
That's a picture of a picture.
I understand that, but I'm asking you.
That's...
Why didn't you provide the message of, ugh, this sucks?
I did, and what I'm saying to you is that when you take a picture of a phone with a keyboard up, it's going to block the lower half of the message.
Okay, so on November 1st, you agreed to an interview with Detective Hancock, correct?
Sounds about right. Yeah.
No other officers?
Yeah, November 1st, yeah.
No other officers were present, correct?
It was just Hancock in the interview room, correct?
And you talked about your phone call that you made with Troy Teskey, right?
I did it in front of her.
No, I know. You were very, very cooperative, correct?
I thought so.
I don't think you mentioned on direct examination, but tell me if I'm wrong. You also made a phone call to Joe Swanson in front of Detective Hancock.
I don't recall it being in front of Hancock. It was as I was driving away, and it dawned on me that I kept on seeing brass and nickel, and it didn't walk with me. It didn't make sense.
Joe Swanson and the original batch of the ammunition was very much on your mind. Fair?
Of the reloads, yeah, I was fairly confident that somehow some of that reloaded ammunition came in through a piece of leather, or Hannah had been gotten hold of some of it, been shooting it, commingled it with dummy rounds. I was concerned that it was going to be a Joe Swanson reload.
It turns out you actually made the call to Joe Swanson within earshot of the police recording equipment. And you asked Mr. Swanson about the green ammo can.
I don't recall that.
Okay. And you then said, shit. Well, she didn't do her fucking job.
Now I recall, yes.
I bet you do, right? And the she who didn't do her fucking job was the armorer, right?
Correct. And
the shit is the commingled rounds, isn't it?
Well, I think the shit was a concern that Swanson was going to get dragged into this, and it was going to have been some of his reloads that caused the death and injury.
Oh, the exclaiming of the shit was your concern for Joe?
I think it's a collective. I mean, there's 4 of them there. There's a lot of shit.
So some of the shits were for everybody that had ever touched the commingled round.
The whole thing is awful.
Okay. Can we agree that you didn't intentionally provide live ammunition to the set of Rust?
We can agree that it didn't at all.
Okay. Well, we can't actually agree to that.
Okay.
And by the way, that's November 1st. November 30th, okay, a month later, the police come knocking with a search warrant, right?
Yes.
Just like you were there at the truck search, you were there at the PDQ warrant search, right?
I was on a connector flight from Phoenix.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Both times, both at the truck and at your the search at your prop house, both times you happened to be grabbing onto a flight and getting there just that day, right?
No, actually, I was in Las Cruces on Bruce Willis's final movie, finished that, and was heading to the Rust set directly from Las Cruces, driving in the Sprinter van.
That was after you got the code to the safe, right?
I recall that I got the code while driving.
So if law enforcement were to have represented in this courtroom that they needed you to open up the safe and that's why you were at the truck search, that's not actually true, because Sarah Zachary had the code, they had the code. That whole story about needing you there for the code is pure fiction, right?
I don't know that it's fiction. I think it was more along the lines of Hancock wanted to interview me, and also I wanted to be there to assist in any way that I could have with the investigation. So I think they're being cordial in waiting for me to show up.
Okay. Back to PDQ. The warrant was signed by a judge authorizing them to search your property, right?
I saw that, yes.
And when you saw in the warrant that it talked about the reloads in the green ammo can, you actually started to text Detective Hancock, upset with her for including that in the warrant, didn't you?
I did.
You had video surveillance at PDQ, correct?
There was, I don't recall exactly at what point the camera overrode itself.
Well, that wasn't my question. My question was just you had surveillance footage at PDQ. In fact, in the...
Yeah, but excuse me, if the footage has been overwritten, then I don't have it.
You have surveillance equipment there that records whether it's overwritten or not. You don't know. Is that your testimony?
I have surveillance equipment, yes.
Okay. And actually, during the search of PDQ, you were looking at your phone, because you have a remote access, trying to see the surveillance footage and what it was catching. Do you remember that?
I don't recall that, no.
Did you deny it?
If I was actually inside the premises...
You're inside the premises on your phone looking at the surveillance equipment that you have remote locked into your cell phone.
I don't recall. It's
But
possible.
Okay. And the testimony you have given this court is at that point in time, right? There's a green ammo can there, correct?
Yes.
The same green ammo can you're calling Swanson and Teskey about in front of Hancock, correct?
Sounds, yeah, roughly accurate, yes.
Right. And written on it was the word empty, right?
Was it? Oh, on, yeah, black ink next to the silver duct tape on top, yes.
And lo and behold, law enforcement doesn't find anything in the empty can, right?
There was tags and office supplies and other things in it.
But we know at one point there was ammunition in it, right?
Last time in Texas.
Nothing further.
Unless the court has any questions for the witness, I don't
This
have
witness
anything.
is excused. Thank you, sir. Next witness. Thank you.
Mr. Rahab?
You swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Have a seat, talk into the microphone.
Corporal. On November 1st of 2021, did you have a meeting with Seth Kinney?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of that meeting?
I don't know the entirety of the purpose of it, but I think it was something to do with ammunition for Rust.
And were you provided, or did Mr. Kinney share with you a photograph of ammunition?
Yes.
And do you recall the photograph?
No, I don't.
Would you recognize it if I showed it to you?
I might.
Does that look familiar?
Not entirely, no.
Okay, let me show you something else. Would it refresh your memory if you saw the text exchange between Mr. Kinney and Mr. Teskey?
Yes.
Can you see that? Do you want me? I'm going to enlarge it. Do you see the date?
I do.
I'm going to go down so you can see the rest of it. Do you see the rest of it?
Yes, I do.
Is that the photograph of the ammunition that was shared with you by Mr. Kinney that came from Mr. Teskey on November 1st?
I remember this conversation between the two of them.
Okay, explain it to us then. And I'm sorry, I'm showing you for the record States Exhibit 1 for the motion hearing. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Well, tell us about the conversation.
Yes.
Tell us about this meeting. What happens?
So this was a conversation with Troy and Seth, and I guess an exchange of where the rounds that Troy may have had that could have been in relation to Rust. Right? Yeah.
So, did you see this photograph on that day?
Yes.
And were you able from the photograph to determine whether or not these rounds were similar to the rounds found on the set of Rust?
These would not have been similar to what we had found on Rust.
Okay. And from this vantage point, how can you see that?
So some of them, well, a lot of them have an actual head stamp of companies or manufacturers such as Winchester, BHA. I think the other one says CBC. It's a little hard to see with the shadowing in the picture. The only one out of these that would have been somewhat similar to what we had found on Rust is the third one from the left, which shows the Starline brass logo and it says 45 Colt. However, a distinguishable difference in this round and what we had found on Rust would have been the color of the primer. They're different colors.
Okay. If you recall, did you yourself ever have a conversation with Mr. Teskey?
Not where it was just me and him, but I have had a conversation with him in the conversation.
So let me ask you this. After you were provided this information, the photograph and the information about the rounds, where was your understanding of where those rounds were located?
In Arizona.
And did you have any communications with Mr. Teskey about obtaining those rounds?
Yeah, I had asked Mr. Teskey at least a couple times for him to figure out how to send those rounds to the sheriff's office. I asked him on a couple different occasions to either ship them or figure out a way that we could still get them in the sheriff's office possession.
And you wanted to do that even though they didn't appear to match the rounds from Rust?
Yes.
Why?
Because the investigation in itself was still very fresh at that time. It was still ongoing. I wanted to make sure that we had all the information that was brought forward to us in order to continue this investigation.
Did you see Mr. Teskey at Ms. Gutierrez's trial?
I did.
And were you aware that Mr. Teskey was a friend of Ms. Gutierrez's father?
Yes.
Did you receive any communications during the Gutierrez trial relating to Mr. Teskey?
I did.
Tell us about those.
So during her Hannah's trial, or near the end of it, I had gotten some correspondence that a male by the name of Troy Teskey had came in and had ammunition, and that he wanted to turn it over
Came in where?
to the courts.
So he came here
Yes.
to this building.
Yes.
And who did he speak to, if you know?
He spoke to I believe the deputies downstairs that were working the courts.
And what were you doing at that point in time?
I was here in trial.
So you receive information that there's a person down there that has what?
Ammunition.
And how did you respond? What did you do?
I had asked the deputy, I said, can you just have him wait here until I have a moment that I can speak with him?
Did he wait for you?
No.
Where do we go from here? What happens next?
From there, I believe we had a break. I had asked where Troy was. They said he was no longer here. And then further on into the day, I don't know if it was a call or a text message, but I had gotten word that Troy had shown up to the sheriff's office and was trying to turn over that ammunition. At that point, we're still in trial, so I have a little bit of limited time and where I need to figure out logistics with this. And I believe I had gotten a call from the lieutenant or someone there, and I said, okay, well, I'm still here, but I will make contact with him at a later point and get a statement from him so we can figure out what to do with this.
And at that point in time, were you aware that he had left some ammunition at the sheriff's department?
Yes.
And did you take steps to contact Mr. Teskey to take his statement?
I did. I called him twice when I had found out that he had shown up to the sheriff's office. I didn't receive, or he didn't pick up the phone, and I never received a call back.
And let me ask you, why is it important for you to take his statement?
Because I need to figure out what to do with this ammunition and how it would potentially be tied to the case and in what way, so I can figure out what to do with it after that.
At the time that you are reaching out to him that day, do you have any idea whether or not this is related to the case?
Just by him saying it might be, but not in what context it would have been.
But you didn't speak to him?
No.
Okay. And is that the reason you were trying to reach him?
Yes, and to try to set up something where I could have a discussion or an interview with him.
And you want to have the interview because you want to see if it's tied to the case?
Yes.
So you call him twice, and does he respond?
No.
Do you continue to try to reach him?
I did try to reach him again. I believe it was the following week. I tried to reach out a couple times and never received a response back.
So if you don't have a witness who will give you an interview regarding the items that they've dropped off at the sheriff's department, how do you know that they're in any way related to the case?
I really wouldn't, because I didn't have a discussion with him.
Has Mr. Teskey ever returned your calls?
No.
Did you... Are you aware that the exchange between Mr. Teskey and the people at the sheriff's department that took place when you were in trial with me, are you aware that at least part of that was recorded on a body-worn camera?
I know now.
When did you learn that?
Today?
And have you had an opportunity to review it?
We've
Yes.
never been given this, Your Honor.
I just got it. So
Okay, I just want the court to know. This is
I can give it to them.
This is the newest of the revelations.
So there's, when Teskey comes into the station, it's being recorded on a body-worn camera?
I believe that the defense did have it because they knew what Mr. Teskey was saying to Popple. That's the basis of the cross-examination.
Well, it's not, it hasn't been admitted as an exhibit.
Sure, and I can call Popple and have it admitted as an exhibitor. I can call Brandel, but it's a motion hearing. How do you want me to handle it? She's now seen it. I can give it to the defense.
No, I'm going to have the person that whose body it was on. Let me ask you, in the meantime, while I'm listening to this testimony, can I have the exhibits from Popple that she testified about the bullets and what they were, when they went to the FBI? Her inventory of bullets. May I have those exhibits? I know there's a lot of them.
Sure. I think there are probably some also from the defense. So does the defense want to go through their file? Do you want me
I
to
just
do it?
want the ones that Popple testified off of, not any
I
cross.
don't remember exactly.
Are you looking for the one that I just highlighted specifically?
No, I'm looking for the ones that Popple testified she inventoried and had tested.
Are you asking for scene photos or no? Just the ones that she had in the sheriff's
Yes,
department?
where she went through and some were in Ziplocs.
Okay, so not scene photos, just the ones from the sheriff's department? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Do you have those?
They should be.
And just for the record, Judge, we don't have the body-worn camera.
But I'm hearing you. I want to look at the bullets.
The physical.
I'll take the physical.
You don't need photos of boxes?
No,
just
no,
bullets? Okay.
I want what she testified of, the ones that were gathered at the scene, and then she went through how she tested them. There they are. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I think these are fine, Ms. Morrison. Okay, thank you.
37, 36, 37, 38, 39.
Oh, so you want the actual bullets?
Well, these
Sorry.
are fine.
Okay, I thought
Well,
you
I
had
was
photographs.
going to take the photos, but these are good too.
Okay.
Are
Do you
these,
want the photos
may I
also?
ask, are these these aren't all that were gathered at the scene, were they?
They are.
These are the sum total?
Correct. There were only 5 live rounds in addition to the spent casing.
Okay, which ones were, were only the live rounds tested by the FBI? No, there were more that were tested by the FBI.
There were dummy rounds that were sent to the FBI that were confirmed to be dummy rounds.
Okay, that's what I want to look at.
The
Do you have
dummy-
pictures? Do you have pictures of that?
I don't think we've had her testify to that. I don't know.
Can I have all the exhibits that were entered while she testified? That's the best way to put it.
Sure. Right.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. Do you want them from the state and the defense?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm.
Do you want to announce what they are? Hayden, can you tell us what the exhibits are during Popple's testimony? Or I actually can, because I took notes. There they are. Let me do it.
Hang on. We need to catch up with you if you're going to give us numbers. Hang on.
All right. Do you want me to tell you what they are?
I think Brian next to me has them. I'm just trying to get there. So I don't want you to list them off to me yet.
Well, it's just 15 through 21.
And I'm looking to start here at 15. I'm not finding 15, so give me just a minute. I've got 18 set aside, I've got 17 set aside, 15, 16. What was the other one? That's 15, 16, 17, and 18.
Okay. And then 20, 21, 23.
Okay, slow down, because it's, if you would, please. What was the, give me the first number again? We've got a ton of
20,
exhibits
20,
here.
21.
20 and 21?
Uh-huh,
Okay,
23, 25.
hang on. This is 20. You want
Oh,
that?
no, I just want the gun.
21 is the
You can
shot
go
of the
whenever you
pew.
Yeah, I don't want the pew. I want
Okay, what else?
just
So here's 10. Do you want that? That's a scene photo. But she testified to it.
a scene photo. What do you mean?
It's from the set of Rust. It was taken on the set.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want these? This does, okay. This one has ammunition on it?
Which is that from? Oh no, I don't want.
This
I
is
only
9.
want the ones on the set, not in PDQ.
Okay. So what I'm handing you is all photos of states exhibits that were of ammunition. Do you want the spent casing?
No.
Okay. Do you want me to go through the defendant's exhibits?
I want the defendant to go through the defendant's exhibits.
I'm glad you asked.
Do you want this?
Yeah, sure. Where's
Okay,
that?
that's the spent casing.
Okay, yeah.
Those are the ones I have.
I have them here.
There you go, Judge.
All right, thank you so much. These are it. After all I asked for. Seems kind of thin from what
You know what? Hang on just a second. Let me go through these real quick.
All right.
Stop for just a second. Let me see what's in front of me.
These are enough. These are enough. These are enough. Okay, I'm good. I'm good. All right, let me just use these. Okay, let me just see if I might ask for more later. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt your question.
No, that's fine. Due to Mr. Teskey's refusal to speak to you, were you ever able to tie the items that he dropped off at the sheriff's department to the set of Rust?
No.
Given that this is a motion hearing, and if the court wants me to do this a different way, please tell me. Over the lunch break, were we able to obtain the video and watch it?
Yes.
Did you hear what Mr. Teskey said in the video regarding whether or not these came from the set of Rust?
He said that they were not from the set.
That's what he said on the video?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm happy to get...
He can't cross-examine off of this.
Sure,
so,
and I can get it to him.
Well, you are going to give it to him, and this testimony, he can call her back up if he wants.
Absolutely, sure. I'll pass the witness.
All right, I have some questions. Can you put back on that video of the text that Seth Kenny
Sure.
got from Teskey?
If you guys have a flash drive, I'll give you that video right now.
And can you blow that up,
You want the top or the bottom?
the top?
Okay.
All right, I'm going to ask some questions.
Sure.
All right, so you testified that that only one seemed similar. Let's see, one similar to the Starline brass color primer in Arizona. And that, it's the third one. It says 45 Colt?
It didn't seem similar in the primer. It was different in the primer color. So
In what, why is it different in the primer color?
because the primer on this, the third one it's a brass color. The primers that came from Rust were silver.
These are, you counsel, you need to come up. Counsel, you need to come up. I'm questioning, you're gonna need to see this, both of you.
I can see what you're showing her. I saw what you're showing her.
I only see one silver here.
Right, but this is in reference to the live ammunition.
Look, you just testified. Let me just ask this. None of these look similar to the set on Rust,
To the live ammunition.
to the live ammunition on
Yes,
Rust.
ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
Your Honor.
But it still looks similar to what was on Rust.
Yes, as far as, yes.
It looks similar to these on Rust.
For the dummies, yes.
Yes, it looks similar to dummies on Rust.
Dummies, but not live.
Okay, I understand your distinction on
Okay.
live. But they still look similar. That one, the third one from the left, still looks similar to dummies on Rust.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Can I proceed, John?
Yes.
I may not even need the video right now, so we can start without that.
All right.
Good afternoon, Corporal. When you started investigating this case, you were investigating this concept of sabotage, that there could have been an intentional live bullet placed onto the set. Do you remember that?
Not originally, but later on, yes.
Okay, and obviously if somebody...
I missed a question. Let me just ask it. So they're not similar to the live rounds. That was not similar to the live rounds, but they were similar to the dummies on Rust.
That's correct.
Okay. And the dummies on Rust were tested with the live ammo by the FBI.
Yes, some of the dummies were sent.
Some of the dummies that look like that one on the phone.
I couldn't say which exact ones were sent to the FBI.
Okay, but you just testified that looks similar to the dummies on Rust.
Yes.
You didn't differentiate, and that some of the dummies on Rust were sent to the FBI.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, at certain point early on in this case, you entertained the possibility that this was an actual sabotage, that somebody could have intentionally placed the lethal bullet onto set, correct?
Yes.
And you quickly dispensed of that concept, right?
I don't think it was quickly dispensed. It was investigated.
Okay. And fair to say that if that had happened, that would have been a far different case, right?
It could have been. I don't...
And so then you turn to the idea of, well, somebody outside of Rust could have placed or been the cause of the ammunition ending up on set. And you interviewed Seth Kenny, I think you told this court yesterday, 10 times at least, right?
Yeah, I can't put an exact number, but it was a few times, yes.
Right, and that would have been a different case also, right?
If he had provided them? In relation to this case or in relation to the past case?
In relation to any case.
It's hard to say.
Well, you were here for investigator, I'm going to do this again, CST Popple's testimony yesterday, weren't you?
Yes.
And you've had an opportunity to view the 45 Starline brass that came out of this package today, correct?
No.
You haven't looked at it yet?
No.
Okay.
He was excluded as a witness, I think.
Are you aware, as you sit here, that there was 45 long Colt Starline brass nickel in the courtroom today from CST Popple?
I just found that out today.
Okay. So, you were here for this testimony in this courtroom. And let me ask you, Ms. Popple, the ammunition that the Good Samaritan Mr. Teskey, the close friend of Hannah Gutierrez's dad, when that ammunition that he brought into you after the conviction, you still have it? Answer, yes. Question, you can bring it in here and you can show it to the jury, right? Answer, yes. And they can see for themselves that it does not match the live ammunition from the set of Rust, correct? Yes. And that it is obvious. Just when you look at it, it is not. Yes. Do you remember that testimony that you were sitting here for?
Yes, I do.
And that turns out to be completely false, doesn't it?
You're correct.
Mr. Kenny was just here. Did you see him in the hallway?
I saw him in passing, yes.
You interviewed him, I think you said over 10 times, right?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number.
40 plus phone calls, I think.
It was a lot.
Okay. And we have some of those text messages, and I'm going to put up defense B. On the screen. And it's not working. Okay. Okay. And you see at the top, this is a screenshot that he's sending you, right?
Yes.
And you see it ends with, yup, it's evidence. Yup, it's evidence in the accidental death, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. And he does not include the ugh, this sucks when he sends it to you, right? You don't see any ugh, this sucks on this, do you?
No.
It talks about how it looks like it's been reloaded. And that's him telling you that, right?
Sorry, let me just read it really quick.
Sure.
Okay.
And you ask a very interesting question, Corporal, that sounds a lot like the question the court just asked you. You ask, do you think it could have come from the same batch since it's a different color? Right?
Yes.
And he says, in writing, in no uncertain terms, I thought the same thing regarding the primer, but Joe has been known to mix different color primers and blanks. So no, still highly likely that it's from the same batch. Did I read that right?
Yes.
And you had that information in the month following the incident, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to fast forward. I'm not going to go through the Seth Kenny story with you today, okay?
Okay.
But it's fair to say, if we even fast forward to the end, Mr. Teskey comes in, and you had known Mr. Teskey's name because Seth Kenny had called him in front of you, right?
Yes.
And Seth Kenny's name came up, withdraw. Troy Teskey's name came up several times because Seth Kenny brought him up several times, right?
Yes.
In relation to the idea that the same batch of rounds from 1883 had at different points and different quantities touched Joel Swanson, Troy Teskey, Seth Kenny, right? They were all involved.
I don't know if it was in relation to 1883 or where it originated from exactly, but that it might be related, might be.
And that they would talk about in front of you on speakerphone the green ammo can that had leftover ammunition, correct?
Maybe. I'm not too sure.
Well, you're not denying that, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay. And in fact, when you went to search PDQ, in the warrant that you put in front of a court to get access to PDQ, you wrote into that warrant that you needed to find the green ammo can, correct?
I did.
And the reason that you needed to find the green ammo can, as you explained in the warrant, was because there may be live ammunition on it that matched the round that struck Miss Hutchins, correct?
Yes, that was where that originated from, was from Thel.
Well, but you see, I knew you were going to do that. It's not the only place it originated from. It also came up with Mr. Teskey and Mr. Swanson in front of you on November 1st when Mr. Kenny found out and said, shit, 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 but it's her fucking fault, right?
He said that a lot.
He said that exact phrase? Shit, 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 but it's her fucking fault? He said that a lot?
Yeah.
Did you grow suspicious of Mr. Kenny if he kept saying that?
No.
Okay. So, in any event, you knew that Mr. Teskey was at least somewhat involved because when you're interviewing Mr. Kenny, he's calling him in front of you, correct?
Yes.
Sending you screenshots of messages with him, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Teskey showed up here, according to you, at the Hannah Gutierrez retrial, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Teskey then walked into the police precinct with ammunition that he claims and says is matching to the ammunition that struck Miss Hutchins, right?
I don't think he ever made the statement it was matching.
Well, that's really for law enforcement and the FBI to decide, isn't it?
Which would have been investigated if he would have answered a phone call or returned a phone call.
Okay, and I know we're going to get to that, don't worry. But wasn't the first excuse you gave, Corporal. The first thing you said when this came up in direct examination was that you didn't know it was related to this case. Do you remember testifying to that on direct?
How would I have known if I wasn't given an opportunity to talk to him myself?
You would have no way of knowing that the man who was on speakerphone with you talking to Seth Kennedy, the man whose screenshots you received, the man who showed up at the Hannah Gutierrez retrial, the man who walked into your precinct talking about the Rust movie, you would have no way of knowing that it was related to Rust?
I would have need to come to the conclusion myself that it could have been tied back to Rust. There's been many people throughout this investigation that state that they have evidence or testimony to give that wasn't in relation to what I was doing.
Uh-huh. So is there other evidence in this case that has this quantum of proof that you have hidden from the defense?
I don't think I've hidden anything.
Is there any other evidence in this case that you think this court should be aware of, that you're aware of, Corporal Hancock?
No.
And when Mr. Teskey came in, he stated that he believed it was from the same batch of ammunition that was located at Seth Kenny's warehouse in Albuquerque, correct?
When he came in?
To the precinct.
So sorry, I just want to understand this.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying that Troy Teskey made the statement to law enforcement that the ammunition matched Rust.
Correct.
Where is that statement coming from?
In your own police report.
Okay.
I'm reading it.
Okay, so this,
Can I
that's
see
not
the
my
detailed
police report.
I didn't say it was your police report.
You
Corporal.
just said it was.
No, I said in the police report.
Just as a point of clarification, can we...
Is this an objection or is she just talking?
Yeah, you got to have an objection, okay? I said no running things.
My
Speak.
request is that we correct the record with regard to Mr. Spira's
That is
statement.
not an objection.
Okay.
What is your objection?
I want to correct the record that you
One
actually did
word.
say I'm showing you your police report.
He's corrected himself. A police report.
In the department, in your sheriff office's police report, okay? I don't mean your personal police report, but in your sheriff's office police report, right?
Okay, understand.
Okay. And not only does this police report come into the very same sheriff's office, correct? Right? This is your police department, right?
Yes.
Okay. Not only does it say live rounds of ammunition that he believed to be connected to the Rust case, right? You
Yes.
saw that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Not only does he say it's the same batch that was at Seth Kenny's, right?
I mean, that's what it says there. I don't remember that statement in the video, but
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because the videotape, whatever there is that has also not been turned over, it didn't necessarily capture every conversation that Mr. Teskey had inside the police department that day. You don't know that.
That's correct.
Okay. And the other thing that I wanted to mention at this point is it's not as if Mr. Teskey was talking to some random auxiliary cop that happened to be walking through the station. He was talking to CST Popple, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
The same CST Popple that testified yesterday, right?
Yes.
That testified that everywhere in this case that she went, you went. Remember that testimony?
Yes.
Okay. She goes to the church on the day of the incident, you're there, right? She goes to the search of the truck, you're there. You go to PDQ, you're there. In the prosecutor's office, you're there. Trial prep, you're there. And that's who took this statement, right?
Yes.
You know, there's hundreds of items inventoried in this case, right?
Yes.
Every time you inventory an item in this case, there's no matching witness statement, right?
No.
Right? You pick up there's dozens of items, dozens and dozens of items that you all inventoried in this case that have no matching corresponding witness statement, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the story that has now been come up with, that the only reason we couldn't take this item was because there wasn't a matching witness statement, is just spun out of whole cloth, isn't it?
I don't think your statement's entirely correct. You said the reason why we couldn't take this item, which we did take the item.
You took the item, but you took it and put it in a different box than the rest of the items in the Rust case, correct?
Well, I don't think they're all... I mean, I'm not the evidence technician, so I don't know how...
Well, you know this wasn't placed and designated as a Rust evidentiary matter. It was kept and vouchered, as you heard yesterday, under a completely separate identification number, correct?
A different case number.
Right?
Yes.
Unlike the hundreds and hundreds of other items that were collected in this case from a variety of sources, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and a lot of those items were like random, irrelevant, tangential things that all went into CST Popple's inventory in this case, right?
I think all those items were collected on scenes through search warrants or through somebody that gave them to us that we could have had a conversation with. And I could be able to relate what that item was and how it may have been related to Rust.
There was no way to relate this item to Rust, and the guys in your precinct telling you this is related to Rust, and you had spoken to him on speakerphone and you had gotten those text messages. There's no way to relate it?
Again, I didn't get a statement from him when he's dropping off this ammunition and didn't see it because I wasn't there when he was dropping the ammunition off.
Well, your colleagues got a statement, didn't they?
Yes.
Right? It's not like he didn't give a statement that day. He sat in the precinct and met in a room with your colleagues and did give a full statement. So that wasn't true either, right?
I didn't know that until today, that he had sat down with someone.
Okay, but now that you know that, now that you know that he gave a full witness statement, the story that the only reason that law enforcement couldn't possibly dream up a way to connect this to Rust and put it with the rest of the evidence doesn't work anymore, does it? Because he did give a statement, right?
I'm not going to agree with that because he said it didn't come from the set.
Well,
So
you keep saying that, but he's not. The point of this isn't that he literally snuck onto the set and took it back, right? The point is that he had the matching ammunition so that we could understand the source of the lethal round, right?
But again, I didn't know he had matching ammunition.
Well, but your colleagues did.
Again, that wasn't something that was told to me.
I understand your testimony, but given that all of the things we've just discussed about, wouldn't you agree with me that if law enforcement were to come into this court and say the only reason we couldn't possibly connect this to Rust was because he didn't give a witness statement, that doesn't work if he did give a witness statement. True?
Potentially. I'm going to still say that I wouldn't agree with that because I wasn't able to speak with him and how it would have been in relation to rust. When we submit things, we normally need to have a way to describe to the lab the reason for the testing.
We're going to jump to testing now?
Okay, well, maybe not testing,
Objection,
but
minute.
Overruled.
You, I mean, is there a rule in your department that when you take in evidence from somebody who says it's connected to something, that you need to have some additional witness statements before you just voucher it and inventory it with the rest of the evidence? Is there some rule that you could point the court to?
I don't think there is one.
Right. And in fact, there couldn't be, because nowhere else in this case of the 100 of items did this rule apply, right?
But I don't know, I don't think it's correct to compare all the other items in this case to ammunition that was turned in during the end of a trial.
Okay. And I don't want to go through every single item that was inventoried, vouchered, whatever word you want to use in this case. But can we agree that there were lots of items vouchered and taken into evidence in this case that are more irrelevant than this very crucial piece of evidence, right?
I would say that there were items taken in that were irrelevant to maybe trials and all of that, but I can't say how relevant this is if I don't know the origination of where it came from.
And the real reason that you didn't inventory this with the rust evidence is because this harmed and jeopardized law enforcement's case, didn't it?
No, I wouldn't say it either way.
Okay. Well, you then told the court, right? So we've worked through a few of these things. One, first you said you didn't know how it was connected. Then you said nobody interviewed him, couldn't connect it. And then you said to this court that you followed up with Mr. Teskey, right?
Yes.
Okay. And when you follow up in cases, right, and have all your police reports, you write down in a police report, you know, attempted to contact manager Chi Ho, returned my call, missed his call, voice message, right, in your police reports, right?
In mine? That's not mine.
In law, I shouldn't keep using the word yours. In the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office, when you all reach out to witnesses, there are often case supplemental reports indicating an attempt to contact someone, correct?
It's not a requirement.
Okay, did I ask you if it was a requirement?
And I'm just answering your question as to, I don't have to say every day and every time I tried to contact somebody.
Okay. But I'm asking you a slightly different question, which is that in this case, this Rust case, okay, there are lots of police reports in this case that are in your file, even if you didn't personally create them, that indicate law enforcement attempting to contact witnesses and failing to reach them, correct?
That specifically, I don't.
You can't answer that question, yes or no?
Well, I'm explaining why that was.
I didn't ask why. I'm just asking. In your own file that you as the lead agent have, there are lots of police reports that say Detective so-and-so tried to reach somebody, couldn't reach them. Isn't that true?
In this case, yes. And that was done for a specific reason.
Okay. That's great. When you reached out, according to you, you were trying, moving heaven and earth to try to reach Mr. Teskey. Did you ever create a supplemental police report?
No.
Okay. Let's go on to the next thing, which is you testified on direct examination that you then, in the weeks, months, whatever that followed, you attempted to reach Mr. Teskey, correct?
Yes.
Have you reviewed your phone records?
For which ones?
Are you sure you did that?
She asked you a question.
I'm asking for which phone.
Well, which do you have multiple phone numbers?
Yes.
Okay. I know the cell phone number that you've given out in this case, because we have those.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Did you use that cell phone to contact Mr. Teskey?
I don't know exactly which phone that I used, no.
Okay. Did you use the desk phone?
I don't know exactly which phone that I used.
Okay, well, there's no phone messages or calls to Mr. Teskey from the cell phone that you used when you were conducting the rest of your law enforcement in this case, or the precinct, when you claimed to this court that you called?
Yes, I did call him.
No, but I'm asking you a different. Well, let me ask this. Well, you don't know what phone you called from?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, there are no calls from you and your cell phone that you used for everything else in this case to Mr. Teskey during the weeks that you claimed you were trying to reach him. Do you know that?
Okay, so that's my cell phone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. There's also no phone calls in the days and weeks that you claimed you were trying to reach him from the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office, the 505-428-3700 number. Okay?
That's our dispatch number.
Okay. There's no messages from any Santa Fe Police Department's phone in his phone records during that time period that you claimed you were trying to reach him.
Yeah, but if I call, it's more than likely not going to come up from a no-caller ID.
That's a no-caller ID situation?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I would like to see the body-worn camera at some time if that's even necessary for this proceeding, and I have no further questions for this witness.
The court has some follow-up questions. So, on testimony, I don't know which one, who asked it, but anyway, you understood that Troy Teskey came over to the court and the deputies told him to wait for you, and that when you came down, he was gone. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if exactly when I came down, but when I was looking for him, I was told he had left.
Okay. All right. And at that point, you were aware it was Troy
Yes.
Teskey?
Yes.
Okay. So then you find out that because he couldn't, well, assuming he couldn't reach you here, he went over to the sheriff's office, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you say today that he did not, he said these heard from Rust, that's from you reviewing the lapel camera, correct?
That they were not from the set.
The set, and that's from reviewing the lapel camera, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you just reviewed that today. You didn't review it before.
That's correct.
All right. So when you find out, I assume from Popple, that he was over there and he dropped off the ammo, right?
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure who told me, but
Okay. You can't confirm or deny that. Well, you didn't know that he said it wasn't from the Rust set. In fact, the report says that he says it was from the Rust set, correct?
right, which I had just reviewed today as well.
Right.
Yes.
But when Popple when you were advised that Troy was there or was there, your understanding was that he was claiming it was from the Rust set.
I wouldn't say it was from the set, but it could be in relation to Rust.
Okay, so he told Popple it was related to Rust.
Yes.
Okay, and you didn't go over to the sheriff's office and look at the ammo.
No, I was here.
Well, I understand you were here, but you didn't. You said, well, Hannah Gutierrez's trial was over, which I took to mean that it wasn't pressing. But this case was ongoing at that time.
Yes.
So, did you and Popple have a conversation about what to do with this ammo?
To my understanding, it was going to be put in evidence
Which evidence?
at the sheriff's office.
The Rust evidence?
No.
Why not?
Just as far in our evidence section in the sheriff's office.
And why was that determination made?
As to why
Who
it
made
was.
it? Let me ask you, who made it?
These were discussions that were had with myself, with the supervisors at that time, and then with the prosecutors.
Were you the lead investigator?
Yes.
Okay. And you said, and with the prosecutors.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you all had discussions about what to do with what he dropped off.
Yes.
And you all agreed to put it in this separate file.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just very, very brief follow-up on the court's questions. The defense requested, both through you and the prosecutors, to see all the ammunition in this case, right?
Yes.
Okay. And obviously, and I know it's obvious, but I want to make sure it's in the record, we were not ever shown that, correct?
Well, I believe that you guys had a secondary evidentiary meeting with the sheriff's office that was canceled the day before the meeting was supposed to happen. Or an evidence showing, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, we were able to come for some showings and not others. The reality is, when we came for showings, you never showed us this evidence, correct?
I don't know if I can agree with you there, because even on the first day that I was present at the evidence hearing, we didn't get through all the evidence that they wanted to see that day.
I don't have any more questions.
Let me ask you something. If Ms. Popple said it was not in the evidence viewing, would you disagree with her?
If this ammunition, sorry, I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
If what Troy Teskey dropped off was not in the evidence viewing because I can get the testimony, but they had a narrow. If Ms. Popple said it was not part of the evidence viewing, that you did not gather it for the evidence viewing, would you disagree with her?
I believe that we were sent a list of what they wanted to see. And then, Your Honor, the first day that we had done an evidence showing, we didn't get through everything.
That's not what I asked you.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm trying to, then we had another day.
Pardon me?
We had a second day that was set up to continue.
I asked you if you would disagree that Ms. Popple said that it was not included in the evidence viewing. Not whether you got to it or whatever, but whether when they said we want evidence viewing, Ms. Popple said it was not part of the evidence viewing.
I don't know if it was or wasn't.
Would you disagree with her is what I'm asking.
I really don't know how to answer
All right,
that.
Thank you. Redirect?
I can't provide the video until she logs into this system. Mr.
You know,
Spivers
I don't even think the video is relevant. She did not view it until today, so you can look at it. But do you have any cross-exam for her?
I just need to develop my records, so I need to get the video in. I need to get the video.
You can get the video in, okay? Are you going to get it in through her? Because I said it should come in from the person that wore the body
I
camera.
agree with you. He's here.
Okay, well, fine. So, do you have any cross-examination for her?
I do. Corporal, as you sit here today, do you have any reason to believe that the ammunition that was provided by Mr. Teskey came from the set of Rust?
No.
Can I ask this question?
Sure.
When you say that there were discussions and the decision was made by all of you to put that ammo in a separate file, right? Is that correct? You said that?
Yes, ma'am.
Was Ms. Morrissey part of that discussion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me give the court an offer of proof, and if Mr. Spiro wants me to, I'll testify under oath.
You are going to testify.
Sure, absolutely, I'm happy to. I'm showing you State's Exhibit 16. How do you know that's related to the set of Rust?
Because it was collected during a search.
Did it come from the scene?
Yes, I believe that one did come from the church. Or
State's
around.
Exhibit 29. How do you know that's related to the set of Rust?
That was the casing that Marissa collected.
State's Exhibit 10. How do you know that's related to the set of Rust?
Collected.
All of these photographs and all of the items that are in evidence, how do you know they're related to the set of Rust?
Because we got them from Rust. Or during the investigation or some part of the investigation.
How do you know these rounds were in any way related to the set of Rust?
I don't.
Okay. Let's bring in Randall, if that's his.
Are you finished?
Yes, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Witness is excused.
Okay.
Thank you. Your next witness?
Basic judge, raise your right hand.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have a seat. Talk into the microphone.
State your name, sir.
It's Lieutenant Brian Brandel
How are you currently employed?
at the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office.
And do you know why you're here to testify today?
Yes,
Were you present when a gentleman by the name of Troy Teskey brought ammunition into the sheriff's department?
yes, I was.
And at the time, were you running your body-worn camera?
Yes, I did.
And has that now been provided to me?
Yes,
Now, just so that we're clear, when you ran your body-worn camera, how did you preserve that video?
it is uploaded into a WatchGuard cloud.
And when you upload them to a WatchGuard cloud, do you link them to a case number?
Yes, they can be linked to a case number.
Was this video linked to a case number?
I don't recall. I'd have to look at the video, but I believe so.
Okay, and we have the video. I'm trying to... It's transferring over there? Okay, great. Okay. Have you watched the video today?
Yes.
Did you watch it with me?
No, I did not.
I have no idea where it is now, so.
Well, we're going to have to mark it before we publish it.
Do you want me to put it on a flash drive for the court and mark
I
it
want you
that
to
way?
move it into evidence.
Sure, I'm working on pulling it up.
Yeah, sure.
Do you know the date that this was recorded?
I believe it was March 6th, 2024.
Would this be State's Exhibit 2?
I don't know.
I think it is. I'm going to show you what I'm going to mark as State's Exhibit 2. Can we display?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're publishing it, and well, go ahead. I mean, it doesn't
I'm
matter.
not sure what.
All right.
Do you
fine.
want to see the video or no?
I do want to see the video.
Okay.
Just, okay.
Does that look familiar to you?
Yes.
What are we looking at?
That's the hallway area of the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office, I believe, near the first secure entrance into our area.
Is there a reason that we don't have volume?
It does have a pre-record that's just audio, and at the time when I initiate the activation, then it has audio. And to be correct, I was in the hallway headed towards that area.
No.
where it's
Why
secure.
don't we have audio? Does it take 30 seconds for the audio to come on?
It's when I activate it. So I believe it is set to a 30-second pre-video, and then once I activate the camera, the audio
It
will
comes
kick on.
on, okay.
Yes.
as far as I'm concerned, yeah.
Hello. How you doing?
Troy.
I'm Lieutenant Rebel.
Lieutenant, so nice to meet you. I've got some evidence. You need to do this out here? Because I should probably write out something to go with this.
Like a chain of
like a
custody.
statement.
Well, we would have a chain of custody there. So, yeah, come with me and we'll.
That's my wife.
Hi.
That's Becky.
Are you okay with that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Where was Marissa? Went back to her area? There he is.
Hello.
Outstanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just so we have like a chain of custody.
Where are we going?
Wherever you want to go to get the evidence. You can go to the interview. It's fine.
Sure. I can fill out a statement or something. Witness statement. When I'm a witness, I was called here as a witness to the bus trial, and I live in Arizona, so it's a long way.
Right.
And I wanted to.
When I got to the trial,
they said at the last minute, they said, "Okay, I don't want you to testify."
No, right.
Let's bring some evidence, and then they didn't want the evidence.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to walk around with this evidence forever.
That's fair. That's fair. Whether you guys use it or not.
Yeah, I don't care what you do with it. I just don't want to have it.
That's okay.
And they're 45 cartridges. Like,
They're from the set?
no.
Okay.
No. You want to know the details?
Could you hear what the gentleman said?
Yes.
Was he asked if they were from the set?
Yes.
What was his response?
No.
Or do you want me to
Well,
write it down?
let me start with, what is your name, sir?
Troy. Well, that's a great start.
Troy what?
Troy Teskey.
Can you spell that for me?
Teskey. I've got all kinds of identification. You should see it. I'm
And where are you getting called by?
a retired police officer.
By
and
the defense.
Defense? Okay.
Yeah. But they didn't end up using it.
Okay.
here's my police ID. And then I'm also a judge. You need to see that.
Sorry. And we'll drop them. Okay, so they were going to have you bring 45 rounds?
Yeah, and at the last minute,
They talked to
The
her,
defense.
him on the phone. Years ago, they said that they were going to have somebody pick it up from Roseland, which they never did. Okay, so he brought it out here just in case.
Becky, this is my story.
Okay, but get it out of here. I don't want it anymore. This is
Sir, do you recall this conversation?
Yes, I do.
Do you know when Mr. Teskey is talking about being called as a witness in the Gutierrez trial, do you recall which side he was being called by?
I only learned that when he identified that.
What
Speaking
side?
now, on the defense side.
And when he said that he brought ammunition, but they didn't want to use it, was he referring to the prosecution or the defense?
Is there any basis to know that?
If he doesn't, I'm assuming he'll tell me.
I believe it's the defense.
Anyway, yeah.
all right, I want to go.
They told me to, the defense attorney said, hey, why don't you bring those rounds? And I thought, and two times, Hancock and then Morrissey. Hancock first said way back on November 5th, and November 5th of 2021, which was a week after the shooting. Seth Kinney called me. You know Seth? Everybody seems to know Seth here. But Seth, he was a friend of mine, and Seth Kinney called me from Hancock's office. She was a detective at the time, and he said, "You're on the record. I want to know what's going on with you because I have these rounds from. It's the same batch They came from Joe Swanson.
Okay.
You know him too?
Yeah, I know of him.
Everybody.
I've
awesome.
dealt with this case a lot.
Okay, well, that's perfect. The other perfect person to what's your first name?
Marissa.
Marissa? Oh.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm the crime scene technician.
All right. Well, I better jot that down. But I have some good notes on it. So when my big concern was having these. They said, "Oh, okay." I said, "I have these rounds. I have a batch, a whole bunch of rounds."
Okay.
Or a bunch. And then they. I said, "Well, you probably don't want me to send you the whole batch. You want me to just pull something out and send you a picture." So I took a picture with my phone, sent it to Seth, and he was in the office with Hancock. And they looked at it, and Seth said, "Yep, this is evidence from the accidental shooting." The accident.
Now, when you say they're from the same batch of
Yes.
live rounds?
Yes.
Okay.
It's if you know the case, Thel Reed had a whole bunch of live rounds,
Yes.
and Seth and Thel went to Yellowstone 1884, 1883, and he was teaching people how to shoot with these rounds.
Right.
Then they left there and they went together from Arizona, and then they came back and went to another set, which was
Sir, why does your video end there?
Because I walked out of the interview and was attempting to, or I did contact Detective Hancock to see who this individual was and why he was there turning in evidence, like he called it.
Okay. Did you know what it was evidence of?
He'd mentioned that it was tied to the Rust case.
Well, did he say in the video that it was not from the set of Rust?
No,
You didn't hear him say that?
I don't recall him saying that.
Yeah, I stopped it and I asked you what he said. Do you
Oh, I'm
remember
sorry.
giving that testimony?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
sorry, yes.
So the gentleman said on the video it was not from the set of Rust.
Yes,
Okay. And you called Corporal Hancock, right?
correct.
And do you recall the conversation you had with her?
Yes, I asked her, an individual's here, gave her the name. I said, he claims that he has evidence. How do you want me to proceed turning it in and documenting it? Or if she was available to come over and interview him. And at that time, you guys were still involved in the Hannah Reed case, so she was unavailable. And she asked that it be documented, and she would have to do further investigation onto it and interviews.
Okay. I'll pass the witness. I don't know if you have any questions.
I have a few questions.
Do you want me to disconnect? Do you want to leave it here?
I don't,
You don't need it? Okay.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
The witness that was in the precinct told you he was a retired police officer, correct?
Yes.
He offered to make a statement multiple times, correct?
Yes.
Told you he was a witness multiple times, correct?
He did mention that.
Yeah. Told you he had evidence multiple times?
He did call it evidence, yes, but we had to confirm that it is in fact evidence, which is why I relayed to Detective Hancock that she needed to conduct an interview with him.
And what did Detective Hancock say on the phone? Tell me everything about that conversation.
They were still at the trial, and that she would follow up with him and the evidence as well.
And that would have really messed up the trial, right? If they had taken that evidence and vouchered it and let anybody know, right?
I'm sorry, rephrase that?
That would have messed up the trial, right?
I don't believe it was used in the trial because it was never collected on our investigation.
And when Ms. Popple comes into the room, or when your camera comes into the room, she says, "I've dealt with this case a lot," right?
Yes.
And Teskey says, "You're the perfect person," right?
Yes.
And it was obvious from the conversation that Ms. Popple knew who Joe Swanson was, who Seth Kenny was, right?
Yeah, she was familiar with them.
And that interview of him continued, correct?
I believe he was speaking on his own accord. We weren't conducting an interview. He was just there to turn in the evidence that he claimed he had.
Oh, that's not that. So that's your testimony, sir. That if law enforcement is sitting with the witness, and the witness is giving information, and law enforcement's asking questions, and the witness continues to give information, that's not an interview?
Law enforcement wasn't asking questions. That was our crime scene tech.
No, not a single question was asked in that entire body cam?
I don't believe that I asked a question pertaining to the case other than believing it was evidence that was already part of the Hannah Reed case, and there was already a chain of custody until after he began disclosing where the evidence came from. That's when I learned that it wasn't actually part of that investigation, or it wasn't collected by our agency. It wasn't our actual evidence that was collected.
Right, and you know, I don't have all of your police reports for all of your cases every time you get evidence, right? But fair to say sometimes evidence is developed by people coming into the precinct and turning in evidence?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And you write in your report, it should be noted that this is not actual evidence. That's what you write in your report.
I believe pertaining to our initial investigation.
It should be noted that this is not actual evidence from the death investigation collected by SFSO detectives. That's what you wrote, right?
Correct, and it wasn't collected by our detectives for the investigation. The initial investigation.
I don't understand that. Can you explain that to me?
So the evidence that was brought, I was indicating because we didn't know if it was tied to the investigation, and Detective Hancock asked that we tie it to a separate case number until further investigation could be completed. So I didn't want someone or anyone to assume that it was actually evidence that we collected tied to this investigation.
And so that was at the direction of Detective Hancock?
No, that I wrote that on my own accord.
Well, you may have written that sentence on your own accord, but I think as you just testified, Detective Hancock, who was at the courthouse with Ms. Morrissey at the time, directed you to put it under a different identification number, correct?
Correct, pending further investigation.
Okay. You were involved, actually, you're copied on some emails with evidence viewing in this case.
I believe so, yes.
Right. You have no reason to believe that law enforcement ever showed this evidence to the defense, correct?
Correct.
I have nothing further for this witness.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, this witness is excused. Next witness?
I don't think I have any other witnesses.
All right.
I'm happy to provide information myself.
All right, we're going to take a bathroom break, and we'll be back in 3:30, okay? Or 3:25, okay? Thank you. We're in recess.
Can you just make sure that Ms. Morrissey is sequestered during the break?
I'm going to stay right here. I'm going to go ahead.
We're back on the record.
The court indicated that you wanted me under oath, and I'm happy to do that. Where would you like me?
Well, okay, so just to be clear, you're a witness, okay? So you can say oath or whatever, but are you calling yourself as a witness? Or do you want Mr. Spiro to call you as a witness?
It doesn't matter to me. How do you want to do it?
I don't think it's necessary, frankly, for this evidentiary record for me to call Ms. Morrissey. I know what happened, and the court knows what happened. I don't think that we need anything further.
Okay, do you want to call yourself as a
Sure.
witness? No, well, just a minute. So he's willing, as I understand it, to rest now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, you don't have to say anything under oath if you don't want to.
No, I'm happy to.
Okay, so not only happy to, you know, I don't, it doesn't matter to me whether you call yourself as a witness. It doesn't matter to the defense whether you call yourself as a witness. So if you're calling yourself as a witness, there's no one here that's requiring you to be called as a witness.
The information, everything that happened in this regard, especially as it pertains to me, needs to come out in the public.
All right, so you're calling yourself as a witness.
And I am, and it was my understanding that the court indicated to me previously that you wanted me to testify. I understand you've now changed your mind. I think it's a good idea if I do it. Where would you like me?
Okay.
Do you want me here at the podium?
No, on the
Okay,
witness.
sure.
All right, Ms. Morrissey voluntarily calling herself as a witness without any requirement by the court to do so, or Mr. Spiro asking her to. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Go ahead.
During my investigation of this case and my review of the evidence in this case, I came to understand that there was a large batch of live ammunition that was in the possession of Thel Reed, Hannah Gutierrez's father. I also understood from all of the evidence and testimony that a portion of that batch of ammunition that belonged to Thel Reed was taken by Thel Reed and Seth Kinney to the 1883 cowboy training camp. When that was over, leftover ammunition was taken back to PDQ props. Seth Kinney took some of the ammunition from that container that he had brought back from Texas and turned it into the sheriff's department. And it appeared to me that he did it to try to exonerate himself. They took it from Mr. Kinney and they tagged it into evidence under the Rust case. Law enforcement then executed a search warrant at PDQ Props and they took the entire container. And I will say that I do agree, as I recall, although I don't have it in front of me, I do agree that the search warrant didn't really require law enforcement to take everything, but it was my understanding that Mr. Kinney gave them everything so that they would have it and could tag it into evidence. Portions of that ammunition were then sent to the FBI for testing so that they could be compared to the live rounds that were found on the set of Rust. The FBI testing demonstrated that the live rounds that were taken from PDQ Props that were originally in Texas did not match the live rounds on the set of Rust. And that's testimony that we heard during the Gutierrez trial. So what ended up happening was Mr. Bowles, Ms. Gutierrez's lawyer, put Mr. Teskey on a witness list and was intending to call him as a witness to the Gutierrez trial. I conducted a pretrial interview of Mr. Teskey, and I want to back up. I did at this point have some understanding that Mr. Teskey had had contact with law enforcement regarding these rounds that he still had in Arizona. So these are rounds that never left Arizona. They were always in the possession of Thel Reed and Troy Teskey. They never went to Texas. They never came to New Mexico. That's what all of the evidence indicated. So I understood that Detective Hancock had communication with Mr. Teskey about trying to get those rounds, and Detective Hancock was unable to get those rounds from Mr. Teskey. I did not find that particularly concerning because those rounds had never left Arizona. The filming of Rust was in the state of New Mexico. And the rounds that were taken from PDQ went from Arizona to Texas to Albuquerque. So ammunition that is in the state of Arizona that has never left Arizona did not strike me that it had significant evidentiary value. Then, and I will say, I believe I actually saw a photo of it. At that point in time, I was able to look at the ammunition myself, and it was visibly dissimilar than the rounds from the set of Rust. We then cut to November of 2023. Mr. Bowles has put Mr. Teskey on a witness list for the Hannah Gutierrez case. We conducted a pretrial interview with Mr. Teskey on November 2nd of 2023. At that point in time, he brought up that he was still in possession of these live rounds that were Thel Reed's live rounds that had never left the state of Arizona. I then, when he started, I think he indicated during the pretrial interview that they were from the same batch that was sourced from Joe Swanson, and I then said, we should get those from you. I had a conversation with Detective Hancock after that pretrial interview about how we could get the rounds from Mr. Teskey, and we were trying to figure out if we could send a local law enforcement agency to pick them up. I was then decided that I needed to figure out if that was necessary, since they had never left Arizona, and up to that point, it was my impression that they did not match the live rounds from the set of Rust. I then, as I recall, reached out to Mr. Bowles. He and I had a conversation about whether or not the rounds should be tested by the FBI. And I was still trying to figure out if I could get the rounds from Arizona to New Mexico. So I asked Mr. Bowles to please send me a photograph of the rounds from Troy Teskey so that I could see with my eyes whether they were even remotely similar. If they were similar, I could go through the steps of obtaining the ammunition, connecting probably with local law enforcement, having a local law enforcement agency go to Mr. Teskey's residence and collect them. I didn't want to do that if they didn't look anything like the rounds from the set of Rust, because all six rounds from the set of Rust are identical to each other. So when I had this conversation with Mr. Bowles, he provided me the photograph that I showed this morning, and this is it was my understanding that this was a photograph from Troy Teskey. So Troy and I don't communicate. He's a defense witness. I can't communicate with a defense witness. So Mr. Bowles, as I recall, texted me this photo, and this is a photo that Mr. Teskey took at my request so that I could determine whether this ammunition was related in any way to the set of Rust, because it never left the state of Arizona. So if it never left the state of Arizona, the only way that it is relevant to the Rust investigation is if it has any similarity to the live rounds that were found on the set of Rust, because we were, at that point, trying to figure out the source of the live rounds. When I received this photograph from Mr. Bowles, I could immediately tell that these are very dissimilar from the live rounds that were found on the set of Rust. They have brass primers. So this is what was presented to the prosecution as the rounds that were in Mr. Teskey's possession. They have brass primers and not silver primers. One of them, the one on the left, appears to be a Starline brass casing, but they have truncated cone projectiles. We had seen ammunition that looked exactly like this, not exactly, but very, very similar, and that ammunition was the ammunition that was collected from the Sheriff's Department and went to the FBI for testing and was determined not to be similar in any way to the live rounds on the set of Rust. So when I saw this photograph, I could see that it was not at all similar to the live rounds on the set of Rust, and I decided not to take any steps to collect this ammunition because it was in Arizona, had never come to New Mexico, and didn't match the live rounds on the set of Rust. So what ends up happening is Mr. Teskey is called to New Mexico by Mr. Bowles to testify at the Gutierrez trial. And you can hear on the video that the court heard Mr. Teskey say, the defense attorney, that's not me, asked him to bring samples of that ammunition. According to Mr. Teskey, he brought the samples of the ammunition, showed them to the defense attorney, and the defense attorney said, I don't want those, I'm not going to use those, and by the way, I'm not going to call you as a witness. So Mr. Teskey sat in court during the trial, and then at some point contacted the deputies downstairs and said, I have this ammunition. So he tried to give it to the defense attorney, who's the person who asked him to bring it. The defense attorney said no. And he then tried to get a hold of Detective Hancock, who was not available because she was with me. So then he ends up going to the Sheriff's Department and he leaves the ammunition at the Sheriff's